Presently, Nahum asked him if the extra wood had made him any more comfortable, and Amy saw what happened. The stoutest cord had broken at last, and the hapless farmer's mind was proof against more sorrow. Questioning tactfully, Amy could get no clear data at all about the missing Xenaeus. In the well, he lives. In the well, was all the clouded father would say. Then there flashed across the visitor's mind a sudden thought of the mad wife, and this changed his line of inquiry. Nabby? Why, here she is, was the surprised response of poor Nahum, and Amy soon saw that he must search for himself. Leaving the harmless blabber on the couch, he took the keys from their nail beside the door and climbed the creaking stairs to the attic. It was very close and noisome up there, and no sound could be heard from any direction. Of the 4 doors in sight, only one was locked, and on this he tried various keys of the ring he had taken. The 3rd key proved right one, and after some fumbling, Amy threw open the low white door. It was quite dark inside, for the window was small and half obscured by the crude wooden bars, and Amy could see nothing at all on the wide planked floor. The stench was beyond enduring, and before proceeding further, he had to retreat to another room and return with his lungs filled with unbreathable air. When he did enter, we saw something dark in the corner, and upon seeing it more clearly, he screamed outright. While he screamed, he thought a momentary cloud eclipsed the window, and a second later he felt himself brushed as if by some hateful current of vapor. Strange colors danced before his eyes, and he had not a present horror numbed him. He would have thought of the global and the meteor that the geologist's hammer had shattered, and of the morbid vegetation that had sprouted in the spring. As it was, he thought only of the blasphemous monstrosity which confronted him, and which all too clearly had shared the nameless fate of young Thaddeus and the livestock. But the terrible thing about this horror was that it was very slowly and perceptibly moved as it continued to crumble. Amy gave me no added particulars to the scene, but the shape in the corner does not reappear in his tale as a moving object. There are things which cannot be mentioned, and what is done in common humanity is sometimes cruelly judged by the law. I gather that no moving thing was left in the attic room, and that to leave anything capable of motion there would have been a deed so monstrous as to damn any accountable being to eternal torment. Anyone but a stout farmer would have fainted or gone mad. But Amy walked conscious through that low doorway and locked the cursed secret behind him. There will be no Nahum to deal with now. He must be fed and tended and removed to some place where he can be cared for. Commencing his descent of the dark stairs, Amy heard a thud below him. He thought even a scream had been suddenly choked off, and recalled nervously that clammy vapor which had brushed by him in the frightful room above. What presence had his cry and entry started up? Halted by some vague fear, he heard still some further sounds below. Indubitably, there was some sort of heavy dragging, and a most detestably sticky noise of some fiendish and unclean species of suction. With an associative sense goaded to feverish heights, he thought unaccountably of what he had seen upstairs. Good God, what Eldridge dream world was this into which he had blundered? He dared move neither backward nor forward, but stood there, trembling at the black curve of the boxed-in staircase. Every trifle of the scene burned itself into his brain. The sounds, the sense of dread expectancy, the darkness the steepness of the narrow steps, and merciful heaven, the faint but unmistakable luminosity of all the woodwork in sight. Steps, sides, exposed laths, and beams alike. Then there burst forth a frantic whinny from Amy's horse outside, followed at once by a clatter which told of a frenzied runaway. In another moment, horse and buggy had gone beyond earshot, leaving the frightened man on the dark stairs to guess what had sent them. But that was not all. There had been another sound out there. A sort of liquid splash. Water. It must have been the well. He left here untied near, and a buggy wheel must have brushed the coping and knocked it on the stone. And still the pale phosphorescence glowed in the detestable ancient woodwork. God, how old the house was. Most of it was built before 1670, and the gambrel roof not later than 1730. A feeble scratching on the floor downstairs now sounded distinctly, and Amy's grip tightened on a heavy stick he had picked up in the attic for some purpose. Slowly nerving himself, he finished his descent and walked boldly toward the kitchen. He did not complete the walk because what he sought was no longer there. It had come to meet him. It was still alive after a fashion. Whether it had crawled or whether it had been dragged by any external force, Amy could not say, but the death had been at it. Everything had happened in the last half hour, but the collapse, graying, and disintegration was already far advanced. There was a horrible brittleness, and dry fragments were scaling off. Amy could not touch it, but looked horrifiedly into the distorted parody that had been a face. What was it, Nahum? What was it? He whispered, and the cleft, bulging lips were just able to crack out a final answer. Nothing. Nothing. The color. It burns. Cold and wet, but it burns. It lived in the well. I seen it. A kind of smoke, just like the flowers last spring. The well shone at night. Thad and Murney and Xenaeus, everything alive. Sucking the life out of everything in that stone. It must have come in that stone. Pizzing the whole place. Don't know what it wants. That round thing men from the college dug out of the stone. They smashed it. It was that same color. Just the same. Like the flowers and plants. Must have been more of them. Seeds. Seeds. They growed. I seen it first time this week. Must have gotten strong on Xenaeus. He was a big boy, full of life. It beats down your mind and then gets you. Burns you up. In the well water. You was right about that. Evil water. Xenaeus. Never come back from the well. Can't get away. Draws you. You know something's coming, but it ain't no use. I seen it. And again. Saint Xenaeus was took. Where's Abby? Ami, my head's no good. Don't know how long since I've fed her. It'll get her from and careful. Just a color. Her face is getting to have that color sometimes toward night, and it burns and sucks. It comes from some place where things ain't as they is here. One of the professors said so. He was right. Look out, Emmy. It'll do something more. Sucks the life out. But that was all. That which spoke could not speak no more because it had completely caved in. Amy laid a red checked tablecloth over what was left and reeled out the back door and into the fields. He climbed the slope to the 10-acre pasture and stumbled home by the north road in the woods. He could not pass that well from which his horse had run away. He looked at it through the window and had seen that no stone was missing from the rim. And the lurching buggy had not dislodged anything after all. The splash had been something else, something which went into the well after it had done with poor Nahum. When Amy reached his house and the horse and buggy had arrived before him and thrown his wife in fits of anxiety, reassuring her without explanations, he set out at once for Arkham and notified the authorities that the Gardner family was no more. He indulged in no details, but merely told of the deaths of Nahum and Nabby, that of Thaddeus being already known, and mentioned that the cause seemed to be the same strange ailment which had killed the livestock. He also stated that Merwin and Zenaeus had disappeared. There was no considerable questioning of the police station, and in the end, Amy was compelled to take 3 officers to the Gardner's farm. Together with the coroner, the medical examiner, and the veterinary who had treated the diseased animals. He went much against his will, for the afternoon was advancing and he had feared the fall of night over that accursed place, but it was some comfort to have so many people with him. 6 men drove out in the Democrat wagon, following Amy's buggy, and arrived at the pest-ridden farmhouse about 4 o'clock. Used as the officers were to gruesome experiences, not one remained unmoved at what he found in the attic, and under the red checked tablecloth on the floor below. The whole aspect of the farm, with its gray desolation, was terrible enough, but those 2 crumbling objects were beyond all bounds. No one could look long at them, and even this medical examiner admitted that there was very little to examine. Specimens could be analyzed, of course, so he busied himself in obtaining them, and here it develops that a very puzzling aftermath occurred at the college laboratory, where the 2 vials of dust were finally taken. Under the spectroscope, both samples gave off an unknown spectrum in which many of the baffling bands were precisely like those of the strange meteor had yielded in the previous year. The property of emitting this spectrum vanished in a month. The dust thereafter consisted mainly of alkaline phosphates and carbonates. Amy would not have told the men about the well if he had thought they meant to do anything there then and there. It was getting towards sunset, and he was anxious to be away, but he could not help glancing nervously at the stony curve by the great sweep, and when a detective questioned him, he admitted that Nahum had feared something down there, so much so that he had never even thought of searching it for Merwin or Zenaeus. After that, nothing